Okay, here we go. Nice and quiet.
Sound speeds, camera rolling.
Holding for sound.
Last looks. Calling for last looks.
And set and action.
I need to swap batteries.
You know, making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome to Making Movies is Hard, the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I am Alrik and Liz. I am the founding host of the podcast. I've been crewing up on sets for over 10 years. I've made dozens of films, shorts and features, either as a producer or even a script supervisor sometimes. And now I am finishing up my first feature as a writer-director called The Alternate.
I'm Liz Manischel. I'm a writer, director, producer, and I have 2 features under my belt on which I did those 3 things. And I also have one out in the ether that I'm attached to that may happen. Who knows? I'm a former film critic and current distribution consultant who used to manage Sundance's creative distribution initiative.
This week, we have producer, writer, and director Tom Putnam on the show to talk about his prolific career, starting by directing his first feature in 1996. And how shorts have done more for his career than features, which I really like. I almost argued with him about it, but I was like, why am I arguing with him? This is his experience. It's fine. And then he talks about getting in and then out of director jail, and making his latest feature, The Dark Divide, starring David Cross, which was the fulfilling creative experience he's been searching for his career, which I think is something he said, if not that eloquently, is basically what he was saying. And we also talk about Tom's documentary work, struggling as an artist, and what drives him to create. This is, I would say, a pretty epic conversation, probably more epic than most. We're usually more focused. This one is this odyssey of Tom. It's pretty amazing. But it really illustrates how that you can bounce back from pretty much anything that you think is the worst thing in the world, you can recover from and, get back out there and keep on making films. So I find it very inspirational, actually. Don't go away, because after the interview, we have another Get Shorty with return guest Nicole De Meneses with her latest short film, Blood Bond, which is a total trip. And Liz and Alrik talk about shorts versus features, which is going to be fun based off of Tom's opinion. So, without any more pontification, which is a repeat, but I still like it, here's our conversation with Tom.
Tom, thank you for joining us. Our first question is, or really demand, give us the elevator pitch for The Dark Divide.
Oh wait, this is the worst possible, this is the lowest concept movie ever. It's about a shy butterfly expert who in the 1990s took a trek through America's largest undeveloped wilderness in search of new species of butterflies after his wife dies of cancer.
How many days did you shoot?
We shot 22 days. 22 days throughout Oregon and Washington, almost all exteriors. We shot it's based on this is not the elevator pitch now, this is longer. Is that okay?
You can do whatever you want.
It's based on a true story and nonfiction book by an author named Robert Michael Pyle, who's one of America's foremost nature writers. And we shot in a lot of the real, very rugged, too rugged in some cases, locations where his book and true story took place.
What can you speak of regarding the budget?
I will say it was made for almost exactly half of the lowest number that 4-line producers told me we should make it for.
That's a good sign when you're really working on something that matters. It's just oh wait, we can only get half of the lowest number we should have gotten. We're doing it anyways. We're making this movie. It's great.
Having spent my whole career doing that, I'm sort of also reaching the point where my ulcers and anxiety tell me that I should probably not do that anymore. Because you say that, right? Hey, we'll just make it. We'll limp through production, and then you're there limping through production like this film. I mean, I was sleeping in a youth hostel, or I and the crew were put up at a closed summer camp, which, by the way, it turns out didn't have electricity for the crew's quarters or running water. So it was one of those shoots you hear about that was like Werner Herzog level. Terror, danger. We're in lava tunnels under the earth and cliffs, We're up in a snowstorm up above the tree line. David Cross in his underwear. It's
wow.
Yeah, it was a tough one, but it was the right movie to do that with.
And then how long did you spend working on it from like the writing to it being released?
It was 10 years almost to the day from when I optioned the script to when the film got made, and was working on it. I mean, I don't have a trust fund, but like I got to make a living. So I was working on it in my spare time through a lot of that period. The script probably went through, I don't know, 40 major drafts. And I optioned the book. Really tough piece of material. It's a nonfiction book. It's very episodic. It's written from more of a scientific perspective. And then it just, for probably the first 5 years, the challenge was to make it into a movie and figure out, like, how is this a movie? And what are the arcs? And how do you... The guy doesn't... I mean, in the completed movie, there's 35 minutes where David Cross plays the lead. There's 35 minutes where he doesn't say anything. There's no dialogue. So how do you make that compelling? And then I Jory Weitz, who's been a friend for a long time, who's also the world's most wonderful human being and possibly the world's greatest casting director. He cast Napoleon Dynamite, Blade, put Zach Galifianakis in his first movie. I gave Jory the script, and he became like the cheerleader that every movie needs. When I was just like, this is never gonna get made. What was I thinking? I paid this option money with a Discover card check. I'm an idiot. And he was just the guy that was like, this is a great project. I believe in you. This is worth the time. I think you should rewrite it even some more. Here are my suggestions. And he was really the engine in the car that actually made things start to happen. Jory and I spent a couple of years trying to find financiers for the movie. And then I met two guys named Aaron Boyd and Ryan Frost from a company called Public House. They've been involved with some great movies, the Framing John DeLorean, Madeline's Madeline, Kindergarten Teacher. And I had I had a meeting with them about something else. And they said something that nobody has ever said to me in a meeting ever, which was, what's the craziest project you have? I was like, oh, yeah, I've got that. Let me tell you about this movie. And they loved it. And they started working with me to try and figure out how to get the movie made, given that on paper it seems like absolutely ridiculous financially. But is this too much info?
No, keep going.
But I have a sort of secret weapon, which is that I, out of frustration from making movies that would win like big awards and get great reviews, and then distributors would come on board and they would take all the money and I wouldn't see anything, I became a theatrical distributor. And I did a movie called Burn about the Detroit Fire Department that I released on 170 screens with my partner, Brenna Sanchez, and have taught classes in film distribution everywhere from like USC to the Directors Guild to the US State Department. And that was really exciting to Aaron and Ryan because they were looking for ways to break the traditional distribution model. And here I was doing it and looking for a way to do that in fiction films. So while at first glance, looking at The Dark Divide from a traditional financing standpoint, it seems bananas, the movie actually made a lot of sense from my model because I look for films, or I try to make films that are easily marketable to a large, hungry, underserved audience who wants to come to events. And The Dark Divide appeals to a number of those. We partnered with the National Wildlife Federation, America's largest environmental nonprofit. REI Co-op's a presenter and a co-financier of the film. Those are major outdoor organizations that deal with environmentalism. We developed the film in conjunction with a Native American arts organization and the Yakama Nation in Washington, and cast it with some amazing Native American and First Nations actors. And then we cast the rest of the roles with people who maybe aren't, massive box office names, but they have strong followings who love them and want to see everything they do. David Cross, Deborah Messing, David Koechner, Cameron Esposito, Gary Farmer, Patterson Hood from the Drive-By Truckers. And we used all that to craft a film that kind of fit that model, in that we weren't going to be relying on film festivals or a big sale for people to see the movie. I felt confident that if nobody wanted the movie, I could distribute it myself. And that spoke a language that a lot of filmmakers don't. And that really struck a chord with the investors for the film, because I think most people, including myself with a lot of past movies, you know, you can have a what I would think is a great script, but when, you know, people ask you, what's your audience for the movie? You're like, people who like movies. Whereas this was like a very finely tuned machine where I could give them Excel spreadsheets showing the social media followings and previous box office of everybody involved, and our estimated activation rates and a marketing plan and ROIs and all this stuff. It was really like for a movie that's like about as whatever artsy fartsy a movie as you're going to find, it actually had a very, very well thought out business plan to go with it, which was kind of, I think, the key to also us not having to shelve it when the pandemic happens, when everybody else I know had to sit on or is still sitting on their movies. We had this huge audience we could still release it to. Wow, is that the longest answer to a question?
No, but it's great. I just know that Alrik and I have like a thumbnailed question. What is it? Push pinned in our mind questions that we want to ask in a minute about everything you just said. But we have two quick questions before that. So how big was your crew?
It varied. The main crew, I would say, was probably, I'm going to say 25 people. And then there were days we were shooting where it was the DP and AC and me dressed like in David Cross's outfit doing the hiking shots. So, yeah, I had written it to be shot documentary style with maybe like a 5-person crew. But then you get to the reality of it, like, oh, he has a campfire. You need like 6 guys for a campfire in a national forest because it's highly constrained. He's got sunburn. That's a hair and makeup person. You know, I was sort of shocked by the mission creep in terms of the just like basics of who you had to have.
And then the last of these questions is, compared to all the other projects you've made, how difficult was this one?
It, for me, is one of the easiest projects I've worked on. 100% of the rest of the crew will tell you it's the hardest movie they've ever worked on. Every day, everybody in the crew is like, this is the hardest shoot I've ever had. This is insane. And I'm like, I mean, I come from a documentary world. I chased firefighters into burning buildings, or like went on tour with Insane Clown Posse. I would show up on this and I'm like, there's a structure. Great. And we had a lot of like, this is one of those, everything that could happen happened. A tornado hit our production office, dropped a tree on our pass van and crushed it. I mean, in Oregon, it landed and went 1 block. It destroyed one thing, and that was our production office. You know, weather, animals, mountain lions, you name it. For me, I'm used to like very dangerous and dynamic environments, but it was definitely everybody else. It was. I'd have to like do pep rallies like at the end of each day to make sure everybody came back the next day.
You have a pretty impressive canon of work that you've made. So I'm just trying to figure out how you moved from the first project to the next project to get bigger and bigger.
I went to film school at USC. I applied 5 times to get in. I was determined to get in, and which at the time was a record. And in the meantime, I got a journalism degree while I was doing those applications. And I made a student film there. I made a tiny 8-minute action movie there that ended up playing like South by Southwest and first year of the LA Film Festival. And I discovered film festivals. Like, wow, this is cool. And somebody gave me, I got a job like 2 days after film school as a courier for the Power Rangers. I was driving back and forth to Valencia all day. And one of my professors in film school, who shall remain nameless, gave me a terrible piece of advice, which was, don't make short films. They won't do anything for you. Just figure out how to make a feature. Doesn't matter how cheap it is. Doesn't matter if it's good or not. Just to be able to say you made a feature, to just get something that's 76 minutes or longer done. And I did that along with my friend and for a long time business partner, Jeff Malmberg, who went to film school with me. Jeff is a fucking amazing director. He did a documentary called Marwin Call that, in my opinion, is like one of the best
It's the best.
docs of all time. Spectaculo, is a phenomenal editor, and has some great movies coming out. And it was just a wonderful collaborator for many, many years. So we made, Jeff had, I want to say it was his graduation present. His parents gave him some money, and we decided to make a feature. And we both wrote it. He produced it, and I directed it. It was called Static, and it's all mostly shot in a hotel room that we shot in Hollywood. Very improvisational, and it's about a disgruntled postal worker who has a nervous breakdown and kidnaps 3 people and keeps them tied up in this motel room for a week, or he forces them to watch It's a Wonderful Life over and over till they lose their minds. And it was, I'm actually kind of proud of it. It was sort of an experiment, and it was a movie that, like, I remember LA Weekly called it torturous, and played some film festivals.
It's crazy.
We played at American Cinematheque, I remember, and there were people that were like, I hate that movie. And we're like, yeah, that was our goal. We really wanted him to hate this. Yeah. And so that mission accomplished. And then should I keep going?
Well, I mean, why
Well, I want to know why. Yeah, why is it bad advice to make the feature?
Because you make the same mistakes on a feature you would have made on a short, which only the feature takes a lot longer and costs more money. And I have found, and I can talk about the next few films, I've actually found in my career a great short film did much, much more for me than a feature ever could. And for a guy like me who has to pay for these things myself, or my friends pay for them, or credit card debt, it was much more attainable.
Yeah, but you achieved those things after having made a feature, so you could always say to people, well, I'd made a feature, right? So it's not...
It's a liability. I'll tell you why, in my opinion. If you haven't made a feature, you could be Orson Welles. You could be the greatest director ever. Once you've made a feature and it's not very good, you're a now not very good feature film director.
It's so fascinating because I think this also has a lot to do with time, because you made this film like in the 90s, right? Your first feature. And in those days, I think a short film probably would speak a lot more, like a really great short film. There's a lot more traction that can come from that, when not as many people are making short films. But now, in 2020, when everybody makes a short film, there's thousands and thousands upon thousands of short films out in the world. It's really hard for your short film to be seen and to get out there. So, now the advice is, you got to make a feature if you're going to have any... But you disagree? You think that's still the same?
I disagree, but I'm old, I'm 100 years old. So I did that movie Static. It played some festivals. I am proud of it, but it was intentionally meant to antagonize people, because that was a good idea. And then after that, Jeff again and I and our other writing partner Michael Harbour did a feature called Shafted, a blaxploitation parody about a escaped white mental patient who thinks he's Shaft, and he fights a gang of Steve Martin impersonators, and there's kung fu, and Gary Coleman's in it, and it has and it had a slightly bigger budget, but I think we made it for $90,000. But that was back in the day when you basically kind of had to shoot film. That movie premiered at South by Southwest, played some other good festivals, got released by that company called The Asylum that does the Sharknado movies. And again, it didn't do anything for me, because at the end of the day, it was a tiny little movie that had some funny stuff in it, but I don't think anybody would say it was particularly well made, because we shot in 18 days all over LA. And again, now I've made 2 features, that are like, I mean, most people haven't heard of. They're not amazing. And I got really frustrated. And so I decided, I had also then had an accident where I had a traumatic brain injury and was really dizzy. And as time passed, I didn't get better. It actually got worse. And I started having panic attacks. So here I'd made these two movies that were pretty cartoonish. I wasn't feeling super fulfilled about, that I didn't think represented the kind of filmmaker I hoped I was. I hoped I was a better filmmaker than the movies ended up being. And so I made a short film that I had three friends make with me in my living room for a few $100, called Tom It's His Head, 10-minute short. And that thing ended up winning Slam Dance, winning Aspen, played at a competition at Cannes, 200 film festivals, one of the most widely seen short films of all time. And I got meetings friggin' everywhere. And at least in my experience, I found it's a lot easier for some executive to watch an 8 or a 10-minute short than if it's tight. And even if you don't have a lot of money, you can get away with one joke and kind of it can exist based on charm versus production value and things. That was really helpful in my career. It didn't get me much, but what it did get, other than some great free trips to neat places, to film festivals, back when that used to be a thing, it also got me another short called Broadcast 23, back when Fox Searchlight was doing short films for a brief window. It's called Fox Search Lab. And that was a bigger short film. And having done Tom It's His Head, where everybody wanted to meet the crazy guy that made this movie, but nobody wanted to make a movie with him because they were well, we don't want to make something that looks like this wacky movie. I was determined to make something that was really outrageous, but that I felt spoke to my sense of humor still. It was also something that all of those development execs I had met with would share with each other and felt commercial, but with a unique sense of humor. So I made this movie, Broadcast 23, this crazy 8-minute Bigfoot movie where we had stunts and guys jumping off cliffs, and we got to shoot on. Fox gave us 35 millimeter short ends from some Denzel Washington movie, and we made a rad little action movie that in the end you find out is a very dirty joke. And that's the thing that got into Sundance. And for me, that was the movie that changed everything, unlike the features, because you have a movie in Sundance, even an 8-minute short, it just opened up all these doors. It was a really outrageous movie, so a lot of people were talking about it. I got agents out of it, I got a manager out of it, I got 100 meetings out of it. And that, I just found that for me, short films are something I love. If I could make a living doing short films, that's all I do all day.
Well, you got representation, right? So do you still have representation? Is this something that they help you get projects off the ground? Were they conducive to building your career?
They set up a lot of meetings and talked me into doing a lot of free work for people who should have paid me for it, writing entire scripts on spec for people or 30-page treatments for production companies that had tons of money. And we signed with a big agency, and it was the situation where my partners and I were the smallest clients out of their 30 clients. So did not get work out of it, but then ultimately I had found a project that a friend was producing called, I was debating if I want to talk about the Hottie and the Naughty.
I was going to ask you about it, so you might as well.
Yeah, whatever, fuck it. So then we'd been with them for a year or two, hadn't booked any work, was pretty exhausted, had just worked for free that whole time while still working my day job. And so I had found a project called The Hottie and the Naughty. It was one of the best scripts I ever read. It was basically a Billy Wilder movie, but dirty and upside down, and everything was reversed, and it made me laugh at the end and I loved it, and lobbied really hard to get attached to it as a director, and then took it to the agency, to my agents, and then they attached their financiers to it, and then they gave it to Paris Hilton, and then it became initially like, hey, can we just show this to her? You know, it's just no pressure, no nothing, and then it immediately turned into a Paris wants to do it, and if you're not comfortable with that, you're off the movie. Those are my agents, right? You're supposed to be working for me.
Wow.
But that was okay because the movie starred 2 other people. And the role Paris was going to play was the girl that the guy was into, but that you as the audience were like, dude, no, don't do that. She's terrible.
Is she the naughty?
No, that's kind of was the irony of it. Like, no, she wasn't. But she was like the hottie that he like was into, that like LA hottie who we were like, bro, your beer goggles, come on, don't do this. So I agreed to do the movie based on that. Cast 2, like absolutely one. I got to cast my 2 favorite actors from all of the casting calls in the other roles, Joel David Moore and Christine Lakin, who were phenomenal. And then the budget got cut in half, and I saw the budget the day before filming and was told, you have to sign off on the budget for the insurance or the film won't happen. And I'm like looking at the budget like, what the hell? This is terrifying. But I had to sign it. And so I did that. The shoot was the most difficult thing I've ever done. I got shingles week 2 of the shoot. I had E. coli poisoning and showed up to set every day. Paris Hilton turned out to be the least problematic thing with that movie. I quit halfway through it, and then my manager talked me into coming back and finishing the film. And
Wow.
and I'm trying to not get into the details. It was awful, and it was like every day I was like, every day was like the worst day shooting you ever had. And
Wow.
like, I had days where I would show up and then one of the producers would be like, yeah, we ripped those pages out. We're not going to shoot that today. Thing we'd spent weeks planning. And they're like, because that scene's just a bummer. And I was like, that's the end of the second act. It's where the hero realizes he's been an asshole. Like, yeah, it's a bummer. And they're like, nah, we're not going to do it. So
Wow.
I survived that. My good friend Jeff, who deserved a fucking silver star, was the editor on it, which is let me tell you, is no easy feat. Together, we ended up crafting a cut that we were really proud of, despite that. Because when I was shooting, I was like, despite the chaos, I was like, okay, I can use a little bit of this take and a little bit of that take and a little bit of this, and I can just craft this barely and put it together. And we did. And we did a couple test screenings. People were like, holy shit, you did it. It's not great, but it's like good and charming and funny, and everybody's likable, and Paris is well cast, and it's a very sweet little movie. And then the producers said, thank you for your cut. And I didn't hear from them for a long time. No. And I thought, well, that's odd. I wonder what's happening. And then they said, like, hey, there's a couple things we're gonna maybe just trade out. Are you okay if we do that? And I was like, sure, yeah, just show it to me. I'm in the DGA. You can't recut it without me, so cool. And then one day, a VHS tape showed up at my house from them, and they're like, here's the new edit. And we've sent it to the distributor and the financiers. And I found out later, they'd hired an editor who was an editor on The fucking Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, who I don't think had ever cut a feature. And he had been told to go back and use the first take of everything, because we want the actors to have as little of Tom's direction as possible. They'd reshot parts of the movie without me.
Wow.
Completely recut the movie. And I watched it and I like shit my pants. And I called my attorney and told him what happened and said, you better do something. And he said, well, what do you want me to do? So I fired him. I called my agents and manager and said, you guys got to do something. And they said, we saw the cut, we kind of like it. And I was like, uh-oh. And they were the gateway to the financier. I called the DGA and screamed bloody murder. I called the bond company and told them what happened. I called everybody. I called the National Guard.
And the DGA didn't come to your defense?
Well, let's talk about the DGA. So, you're a DGA director. The producer is not allowed to recut the fucking movie unless you're in the room, let alone reshoot, right? So I talked to the DGA. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely, they can't do that. I'm like, great. What are you going to do? And they said, well, we can't really do much. I mean, we can fine them. I said, but she'll be blackballed, right? She can't work with DGA directors. No, we don't do that. So they ended up fining them. The cut went ahead. They then asked me to come to the mix. They kicked me out of the mix. I got a call from the bond company, and the bond company said, here's the deal. You're completely in your, I basically demanded that they go back to my cut. Because now my career is probably on the line, right? And I hated the edit passionately. There were shots that were out of focus. It was like, they cut in wolf howls when we see the naughty, like into the soundtrack. Woo! I was like, uh-oh, Billy Wilder wouldn't do that. So I got a call from the bond company, and the bond company said, you're completely within your rights to do this. But they've now edited the movie twice, which means they've gone over schedule and over budget. And if you make them go back to your edit, no, they had not gone over budget. They said they've used up so much time and money doing that if you demand they go back to your edit, which you can do, you'll be in your rights from your DGA contract to go back to your edit. That will put the movie in default because it will go over budget. You will have directed a movie that's in default. The bond company will step in and you'll become unbondable for future productions. So,
damn.
I essentially got forced into relinquishing control of the movie. I came to the premiere to say hi to the cast and crew. I've still not seen the completed movie, and I went home.
Wow.
The DGA fined them. They told them they were not allowed to use my name. By the time I saw it, it was too late to take my name out of the credits in the movie, but they told them they were not allowed to use my name for any advertising. Next thing I know, there was a billboard up on Sunset with my name, like Oliver Stone size type with a giant box around it. So they got fined for that from the DGA. They were so in love with the movie. The movie had been pre-sold at a profit. They bought the movie back, released it themselves theatrically on a huge number of screens, hundreds of screens, if I remember correctly. I don't know the exact number. The movie did like $27,000. They had to pay something like a third of that to me for their fine from the DGA. And it was like a total disaster. And I learned more from that experience than anything else I've ever done in my life. I learned pretty quickly who my friends were. The agency and my manager dropped me. I had a lot of people disappear from my life. I had a lot of people not believe in me anymore, rightfully so. And I had just, my wife at the time and I had just had our son, who'd had a lot of health problems. And it really helped me to reprioritize. Ever since I was one of those guys that ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to make movies. I wanted to make a feature. That was my dream. I'd sacrificed so much for that. And I finally got that movie, and it was according to IMDb, the 13th worst movie ever made. Had I shown up drunk every day, pantsless, it could not have turned out any worse than it did. So it taught me a lot about priorities in life. And it taught me about relinquishing control to people and doing a movie where you don't have control. So this story starts to get better now. Should I keep going or should I leave it there?
If you look at your career, like big picture, if someone just goes in your IMDb and just looks at it, right? You have these fiction projects, and then you have this Hottie and the Naughty, which is kind of like this reckoning in your life. And then you have a span of documentaries, right? That you went into. So I'm curious if going into documentary was a reaction to your experience or...
It wasn't. I had been making a documentary at sort of off and on for a few years that spanned that Hottie and the Naughty time, where I'd paid for a chunk of it myself, and then we got investors for the back half. And that came out just a little bit after Hottie and the Naughty. No, before Hottie and the Naughty. And that was a really good experience.
Yeah.
And documentaries, you don't have actors, so it's already 50% less stress. You can do everything yourself with a tiny crew. And I also have a journalism background, so I really, that helped me, after the Hottie and the Naughty experience, it really helped me sort of rediscover my love of filmmaking and the kind of movies I wanted to make, which were tiny, personal movies that felt authentic. So I'd had my son, I was touring around with this documentary, and that kind of was the thing that kind of kept me from completely losing my mind. Although I will say for like the first 2 years after that, I probably spent 4 hours a day being angry about that experience. Really was a lot. But what it did do was I started writing what I wanted to write and writing really personal projects and being very honest, and found that I think I can have the ability to write things that speak to people in a like mainstream way, but seem quirky and have a unique viewpoint on the world. So those things, I basically went to director jail for fiction films, which lasted about 10, 12 years. So I got a job producing sports for CBS, which was super fun and like helped me sort of slowly but surely get my groove back. Did an amazing documentary with Brenna Sanchez called Burn about firefighters in Detroit, which helped me get my groove back a little more and be like, okay, I'm not a complete fucking idiot. Like, I seem to know what I'm doing. That movie that was a really difficult movie. We spent 14 months embedded with the busiest fire department in America, which is busiest firehouse in America, which is also in the most dangerous zip code in America. And that helped me put a lot of stuff in my life in perspective. Like, whatever, I got nominated for 5 Razzies. Jesus Christ, a building just fell on my friend, So that was a good experience. And with that film, I felt like I had become like somebody who was a documentary filmmaker. I'd been a producer on Jeff's movie Marwin Call, which I'm reluctant to even say because that's truly like Jeff and then his wife, Chris Schellen. So I felt like I was lucky to be there, honestly. That was a great experience too, because those films don't get much more personal than that movie, if you know it. And so after Burn, I was starting to feel like I'd been still writing that whole time. And eventually, back to what I was saying with The Dark Divide, eventually Dark Divide got made and I got out of director jail. And I really worked so hard to get that film made because I really felt like I needed to prove to myself, having made now 3 fiction films that were ranged from weird to terrible. I really wanted to prove to myself that I was not a terrible fiction filmmaker. So every day I got up on Dark Divide and was like, this may be the last day I ever get to make a movie, make a fiction film. No one's ever gonna let me make a fiction film again after this, if this isn't good. And just like worked really, really hard. And as hard as that shoot was, it was like summer camp for me because I'd spent 10 years thinking about this movie and wanting to make another fiction film. And every day I was like, I just brought my A game. Here we are.
Okay, so this is like a very specific question. Like, was there anything different that you did when you made The Dark Divide that you didn't do on the other features? Is there any like process changes?
100%. On Hottie and the Naughty, I was a director for hire, as I was told repeatedly. I could be easily replaced. And after that, I said, I'm never going to work on something again that I'm not a producer on and I don't control, and that I don't control. Dark Divide, I optioned it. I wrote the script. I was a producer on it. I was the editor on it. I was David Cross's I was co-editor with Sam Hook, who's a better editor than me. I'm not taking credit for his amazing editing. I was a post-production supervisor. I was a visual effects supervisor. It was really important to me to control the movie. Because I've made enough movies now that I know if I have some degree of control, things tend to turn out fine. And if I don't, it does not turn out fine. I had learned between Hottie and the Naughty and that to not be afraid to ask for what I wanted, which is the thing a lot of younger directors, you have more people, more experience, and you're like, oh, they know more than me. They know more than me. And those individual decisions, those people may be right. But what you end up with is a film that's not a singular vision. Coming out of the documentary world, my process was totally different. On my previous fiction films, I storyboarded everything. On Dark Divide, I would do shot lists, which is very different. And I would go out and I would block it, have the actors block it, really see what they came to it with, and then like craft quickly something around that. And the Dark Divide was a very like specifically crafted movie to speak to my experience directing documentaries in tough environments. So every day when something bad happened, rain or thunderstorm or we couldn't get to the location, I would take a minute and like, okay, what do I want to accomplish? Put my documentary brain on, and then like, okay, here's how we're going to do today. Here's how we're going to do this. It was handled very, very differently. It was very fluid, very flexible. And at the end of the day, the decisions were mine, given like the tyranny of the schedule and budget. And so like the film was going to sink or swim based on my decisions, which is totally A-okay with me.
You're also producing more, right? I mean, it's not just, so, I mean, A, I want to hear if you feel like you've gotten out of director jail, but B, why come on to produce projects that you aren't directing, and where's the fulfillment in that for you?
Sure. I have a pretty large, terrifyingly large sort of regular creative output, because I use that therapeutically, and I always seem to have a lot of bad things happening in my life. So I'm like writing a script, making a short film. And honestly, I'd made Dark Divide and I'm really proud of it. And I proved to myself that like I'm not a jackass. And so now with projects, if it's something I've written, if it makes sense for somebody else to direct it, cool, great. I wrote the script, I feel good about it. I'm producing other people's scripts for a lot of that same reason. When you direct something, especially these little movies that we talk about, that's 3 years of your life that you don't do anything else. And I still love that, and I still want to do it. I have 2 documentary features I'm co-director on with Brenna. That'll be done this year. But I get a lot out of writing, and if I can get my demons out writing a script and then some other poor bastard has to go make it, okay, cool. And there's other genres that I don't get to direct. Like I love action movies. And I have 2 action scripts I wrote that I think are super fun that are with big producers, and I don't get to direct those. I'm not qualified to do that. So cool. I mean, I'm also, I'm 49. I drive a $1,600 car I got from a tow yard as a repo that I had to learn how to fix myself because I can't afford to fix it. I've got 5, maybe 6 figures of credit card debt still from all this past stuff. No savings. And it's like, I don't want to like retire to a refrigerator box under the freeway too. So I'm also trying to be more mercenary about like, how can I somehow make money in a business that's now just a hobby for trust fund kids? And I think the key to that is producing. Like I spent most of the pandemic getting my MBA. I'm done with it in a couple of weeks. And if you want something to show you that the film business is just total jackassery financially, like go get an MBA. It makes no sense. So my way to make it make sense is to try to produce a lot of little movies and occasionally get to direct one of my own.
So, going into like the difficulty of making a movie in general, and then also like, needing these movies to be successful in order to like, actually make some money on them. What makes you decide that, oh, this movie is worth making, this movie is worth producing?
On a creative level, I need to love it and feel like, for my taste, feel like it has a combination of something that feels, it's a shitty word, commercial, but what I really mean is a movie that like is going to appeal to people, but also has a really unique look at the world and a way of telling a story that's unique. And I tend to veer towards things that are more outrageous. And then on the financial side, I try to work backwards. Okay, is there a large, underserved, easy to market to audience this film will appeal to? And can it be made for a budget that I feel reasonably confident it can recoup? So I'm looking, as I talk to you, I'm looking at my like cork board here that has like 35 projects on it. And a third of those are documentaries that are like juicy subject matter that people are going to want to see. A third of those are genre films, like horror or grounded sci-fi films in the like $500,000 range, but that are like, have something crazy that made me laugh when I read it or got me really excited, that were really great scripts, but that had something very special that made them unique. And the other third are these spec scripts I write that are like bigger action things that I hope somebody's interested in.
Wow.
I know we're gearing towards our final 5 questions, but I have a question that Alrik and I often battle about, and it's the question of legitimacy. We're always like, when are we legitimate? And what is legitimate? And is making films in your backyard legitimate? And how do you define when are you a filmmaker and when are you seen as a filmmaker? I mean, Alrik, if I'm doing a poor job of rephrasing this, please jump in. But I'd love to hear Tom talk about whether he feels or cares about legitimacy.
I think everybody goes into this business because somebody didn't love them enough. And that was certainly the case with me. And originally, for a long time, my reward was sitting with an audience and hearing them laugh. And I thought that's what love was. And it was really unhealthy. And it's the exact wrong reason to do something. It comes from a really bad place. And over time, I have realized that I've learned not to give a shit what people think. People have to come and see a movie or it won't make money and you won't get to make more of them. But I've also discovered that when you're brutally honest with people, not just in your creative life, but in your personal life, people respond to that. And that's become something really exciting to me. And that's another reason I don't necessarily feel the need to direct now, I guess I'm realizing. Thanks, guys. That getting a chance to express myself, whether that's just writing the script or I made a short film with my son, Jack, on my iPhone, my favorite thing I've ever made. My best movie ever. I will never make a better movie than that. And nobody will see it. And that's okay with me. Nobody needs to see that one. But for me, I mean, I don't even like the word legitimacy. I don't know what that means. I think success to me is finding ways to have creative outlets that help me just stop the like voices in my head, and that hopefully, and then as a bonus, that those things connect with people. And I've been lucky to make things that have connected with people. I think financially, success is being able to make a living doing what you love. There's moments I can do that. And then there's moments I'm like fixing computers with my mobile Mac repair company, or notarizing shit with my mobile notary company, or editing other people's movies all at the same time and selling crap on eBay, which there's a pile right off camera here. And, you know, I'm like, that's the sort of financial part. There's moments where I'm like, I'm a working filmmaker. And then 6 months later, I'm driving an Uber. And in a way, I think that's a blessing too, because it's kept me hungry and kept me focused on making what I want to make. And that's a long, weird answer to your question.
It's the perfect answer.
It is, and I mean,
To love myself, guys. And that's really the most important gift of all.
what it sounds like is, to you, it's like, you know, whether or not you're making all your money, you know, like directing films, producing films, writing films, whatever, or versus, you know, like whatever, driving Uber or selling things on eBay, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're equally legitimate as a filmmaker, regardless of how you're paying the bills, as long as you're making art that is at this level that meets your internal, you know, barometer of like goodness, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this is the dumbest business, because you write a script and it doesn't get made. It's like a blueprint for a building that doesn't get made. Like, it didn't fulfill its destiny, right? I've written probably 60 scripts. Shafted got made back in the 90s. Dark Divide got made. 2 out of 60. That's not very, I mean, and that's like a success story compared to a lot of people. So you got to find things to enjoy. You can't think of things as failures, right? You just have to think of them as things that weren't successes. That's different than a failure. You got to find things to enjoy in the process, or
they weren't made yet. I mean, they could still have life some other time.
Yeah, I've had projects that Dark Divide took 10 years. I've had projects get set up that sat in a drawer for 8 years, 10 years. I'm at a point where, having written a lot of bad scripts, I feel okay saying this, like, I feel like I'm a good writer finally, and I have something to say, and I've had enough life experience that I can have put in real hurt and real joy in these scripts, and that's got to be the win. Or else, like, you can count on 2 hands the number of people who are like didn't have trust funds that became successful in this business. It's incredibly difficult.
I'm going to move to our final 5 questions, if that's okay, but I feel weird about it because there's so much more.
So much goodness or
I know.
Knowledge to be, you know, pulled out of you, Tom. It's like we could spend another hour and a half. Yeah, I think that was a really good point to end on. So yeah, let's go to the 5 questions, Liz.
All right. I alluded to this earlier, but what's the first film you ever made, and how do you feel about it now?
I was at USC, and they said, for your student film, make anything you want except an action movie. So I made an action movie. It's a parody of John Woo movies. That was like right when Hard Boiled came out, and every red-blooded American male was like, oh, that, give me more of that. It was called 7 Guns Till Wednesday, and it was great. I think about that movie constantly as my ideal for what it's like to make a movie. It's 3 of us and just gunfire and running around and let's do this crazy thing and that crazy thing. And that's always what I aspire to, is to make a movie in a bit of a vacuum where you're not afraid to try things because of failure. Because once you get afraid is when you play it safe, and that's when the movie sucks.
What's the best, one more time. What's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
Lack of sleep is cumulative. Does it have to be one thing?
No, it could be many things, multiple things.
Don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Take care of yourself. Eat well and exercise, or you will die. Coffee and Red Bull are not a substitute for that. And don't be afraid to fail. When you make a decision out of fear, that's almost always the wrong decision. But at the same time, you have to make informed decisions. We've all been guilty of, and we know people who've been guilty of thinking they knew more than they knew too. So that's a balancing act, right? Meditate. You gotta it's a marathon. You gotta take care of yourself.
Do you have a goal as a filmmaker?
I ideally want to keep making films that make people laugh and that make them think, and that I've been lucky to be a part of 3 or 4 projects that I think helped make a difference in, I don't want to say the world, but like for certain people. I want to keep doing that, and I want to find ways to make a steady living doing that and learn how to save up money. So I'm not sleeping on your couch, Liz, when I'm 80, because I will. And want to, I mean, for me, I grew up worshiping the like film brats of the 60s and 70s. And in my ideal world, we all move to some little town somewhere and take it over and help each other make their movies. And you have 20 people making a great little personal American Graffiti, Last Picture Show, Lapsus, something just special every year, and that becomes the baseline for what movies should be instead of like the Avengers. That's all. I have small dreams.
Small dreams, nothing big. Nothing big. If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Believe people when they show you who they are. If you're going to work with a producer and everybody tells you that they're criminally negligent, don't think you're going to outwit them. If somebody is an asshole to you or dismissive in the first meeting, don't think there's a nice person under there. If somebody comes into an audition and they're not very good, don't think you'll get a good performance out of them. Yeah, no, to try not to have the magical thinking we all have, right? Where you're like, it'll be okay, because then you end up making a Paris Hilton movie and getting shingles.
Last question: is making movies hard?
Am I going to get sued after this?
I don't think so.
What's the statute of limitations?
I mean, like, our viewership / listenership isn't that. I mean, we could tell you the numbers. You shouldn't be too worried.
Oh, good. That's great. I feel great about that.
I'm glad that you invested an hour with us. Thanks, Tom.
What was the last question? Was that the last question?
Yeah, is making movies hard?
Maybe you guys aren't old enough. They used to have these Peace Corps ads back when the Peace Corps was a thing. And their catch line was, it's the hardest job you'll ever love. And that's what it is. It's an abusive relationship, right? Where you're like with somebody who's a fucking narcissist, but you love them and you give them everything, and occasionally they throw you a bone, and that keeps you going.
Nice. It's amazing. So
was that terrible? Should I not do that?
No, that was perfect.
Great.
Do not.
It's amazing.
Do not retract.
No, don't retract. So where should people go to watch The Dark Divide? Or if they just want to learn more about you, where should they go?
To learn more about me, you can go to tomputnam.net, and you can just kind of see what I'm all about. For The Dark Divide, you can go to darkdividefilm.com. You can see the trailer and links to all sorts of places where you can watch it. And please don't go to a pirate site. I drive a $1,600 car. If you go watch this on a pirate site, that's like one more thing on my car I got to go to the junkyard to fix. So give me a break. It's like $3, you guys. Yeah. What else? I have an Insane Clown Posse movie coming out later this year called The United States of Insanity. Spent 7 years on that with them. No website
Nice.
for that yet, but hopefully you'll hear about it. It's pretty great.
Awesome.
And lots of other stuff.
Okay, Liz, what do you remember from our talk with Tom?
I've been working with Tom for a few months now. He's the EP of my feature that I'm attached to, that I allude to in the beginning of all these these
That's
shows.
so awesome.
Yeah, I consider myself really lucky to be working with him. I think he's really amazing and just wonderful to work with. So it was interesting to me because I went from being casual acquaintances, semi-friends with Tom, to being I pitched on on a feature that I'm referring to. It's called I Can Change. And then I just got swooped into the Tom world the past few months. But I didn't know any of the things he talked about when we interviewed him. So for me, it was like very edifying. And I love how Tom, I just always feel like he's a straight shooter. Like, I just feel like he never feels like he's manipulating a conversation. It always feels like he's reflecting exactly what his experience is. And he really likes to share and help people. And I think he was going as vulnerable as he did because I think he knew it would help people. And I think it will.
Yeah, he was really honest. I mean, most of our guests are very honest, but talk about like really opening the floodgates of honesty. Like he was very truthful in everything that he said, unless it was all lies. But I can't believe that he would lie about things like that. But yeah, no, I just remember like the shorts versus features thing really stuck with me, obviously. But also just like, yeah, like the way that his career snaked, like, you know, slithered around to where he is now is very fascinating. And it really goes to show that, like, you know, you just got to keep making stuff and just like don't give up on the thing that you love to do. Just keep on focusing on it, and no one can really take that away from you. Like, you know, if you, no matter what happens, no matter what, like how badly a movie performs at the box office, right? Like you, or getting fired from a job, or whatever the big like career thing that happens to you that you feel like is the end of your life, like it's not. There will be more. Like you could get back out there and do it again. Don't worry. And I feel like this conversation really, like, you know, illustrates that perfectly.
And I think the things that he went through, he's trying to course correct in advance for other people. Like I was on a call with him and our another producer we have on board the project for I Can Change, and he was like, I want Liz to have, I don't know, he said a certain number of days. It was like 21 days, 22 days. And I was just like melting in my chair. I was so excited. I was like, 22 days? That just sounds like heaven. But it was this idea of like, I think he's trying to advocate for change based off of what he did. It's not just like he lived it and now he, you know, he talks about, but it's like, I think he's mentoring some people to a degree to make it better.
Yeah, he's not like, okay, well, I did my first feature in 12 days. You have to do your first feature in 12 days. He's more like, no. Like, let's make this better. Let's like actually give you the time you need to be a filmmaker and do it right. You know, that's wonderful.
Big fan. I hope people enjoyed the conversation. It was one of the better ones that I think, one of the more like genuine, actual conversations that I think we've had.
Yeah, definitely genuine. Felt that for sure. But Liz, I think it's Get Shorty time.
So you make movies, huh?
I produce feature motion pictures.
I got an idea for a movie.
This week on Get Shorty, we have a brand new short film from our second return filmmaker, Nicole De Meneses, called Blood Bond. And here's Nicole to talk about the short.
Hey, Make Your Movies is Hard podcast. It's Nicole De Meneses. I'm coming to you from work, so you might see a little Pikachu behind me and some kind of scary mask guy there. So we're talking about Blood Bond today. Really excited about this little short. It is for PJs and Pixels. So first question, why did you make the short versus any other medium? Well, I've been in between projects this summer, gearing up for my first feature film, Dead in Love. It's a poly-paranormal rom-com. And just the opportunity presented itself to make a short for PJs and Pixels. They were looking for new shorts to put on their platform to promote. And I pitched this idea. I came up with it fairly quickly. They had this a 2-week window to turn something in to submit to for them to greenlight. And the goal was we had restrictions. It had to be done on an iPhone. We had a budget of 500, and however creative we could be to come together to make that project, those were kind of our limitations. So yeah, I made the short to make a short. I just had all this creative energy, and I really wanted to make something. And still pushing my queer horror agenda. I wanted to make something with horror related with some friends, and luckily I have a grandma that lets me keep using her beautiful house to keep making stuff in. All right, number 2. How did your team come up with the funds? Well, like I said, PJs and Pixels funded it. Our executive producer is Nico Sparks, so he is in charge of PJs and Pixels. And yeah, there's some other filmmakers out there that got funds as well to just be as creative as they could. So yeah, PJs and Pixels is a streaming platform. If people are new to it, they have a lot of horror and sci-fi genre stuff. So all things that I love. So I love that they're around to help support kind of the little guys that are trying to make movies. Number 3, before making the short, what did you think would end up happening? I just wanted to make something that I knew was going to be online, that I could showcase some friends and family in. I worked with some really great new talent. So it was really just a great excuse to work with some new people. So, and this is a horror film. We had more vampires on set than crew. So if you watch the credits, we have like 3 people who did multiple jobs, and we had about 5 or 6 actors in the mix. And little dogs. So if you've seen some of my other shorts before, I like putting little dogs in the mix. So working with dogs or friends and family is usually what I'm going to do in some kind of horror capacity. Let's see, next, number 4. Now that it's all out in the world, what purpose does it serve? Well, it's out in the world. That's the purpose. It exists. It was just wanted to make something to create something. And like I said, it was fun to showcase new talent, local talent. I really, I'm a regional filmmaker. I like shooting in my backyard. Not a fan of LA, in no danger of going out there to make something. I like utilizing the resources that I have in my hometown. Number 5, would you do anything differently story-wise? No, the story definitely evolved. I had pitched one thing, and it evolved through the process of just, bringing different talent and crew on the project. And so I definitely rewrote the 4-page script a couple of times before we ended up shooting. But all in all, it came together relatively quickly, like a month and a half, just to make this little short. We shot it in 5 hours. I storyboarded everything beforehand, and it was really fun to play with blood and just do something silly and gory. And I had some really good sports. The actors really went for it. So it was a lot of fun. And my little dog actually had just had oral surgery, so she's wearing a little cone of shame in it. And so yeah, she was a good sport. I paid her in hot dogs. My favorite actor to work with, definitely. So yeah, Blood Bond will be on PJs and Pixels, hopefully July 16th. I hope people check it out. And thanks for letting me talk about it. Take care. Bye.
Alrik, what did you think of Blood Bond?
So, yeah, this one was really interesting. It's very different than a lot of the shorts that we get. I like the use of multiple formats. I thought that was fun, that she had moments where it's like security cam footage. She had moments where it was like purely cinematic camera. She had moments where it was like an iPhone camera perspective. Like, she really went for it and trying to mix things up to tell her story. I like the misdirect from this serial killer story to a vampire story. I thought that was really fun. I love the end where all the victims came back to kill the killer. I mean, who's not going to love that? I did think that it could have been a little tighter in the beginning. And that's funny to say with a under 6 minute short, but I feel like in the beginning there were some moments that didn't feel editorially as tight as in the second half of the movie. I felt like the second half, so much happens that it really was like boom, boom, boom. But like in the beginning, it kind of felt a little bit more loose. And then I wish that the first 2 victims, we would have seen their kills rather than just heard and seen the aftermath. Like, I thought that was a cool style and a cool approach, but like, if you're gonna like have someone's throat get slashed, like let's see the throat get slashed. Let's not just see the dead body, Or if you're not going to show the throat get slashed, like show like the intense interaction between someone getting murdered and someone doing the murdering. Like, it felt really impersonal, the way they showed the deaths, especially the first two. The other ones were a little bit more impactful, but I felt like the first two felt so impersonal, and I didn't really feel like that was I didn't really feel like scared or terrified of the killer, because I didn't see that fear within the victims, and I feel like, except the one with the phone, the lady with the phone and the whatever, like I thought that was really cool, like that kind of got me, but the other two, I felt like there could have been a little bit more, But overall, I thought it was cool.
I have a film crush on Nicole. And I want to temper that phrase a little bit, because I have a crush on her, but I tend to be really highly critical of her work. And what reinforces my crush even more is that, she doesn't hate us, or I assume she doesn't hate us. She keeps coming back. Right. She's really kind. She's a really hard worker. Everything I know about her, and I got to know her a little bit because I spoke to a class that she teaches too, and I just really adore her work ethic. But I felt like this piece was hampered by its resources, just like you're saying. I felt like we weren't seeing the kills because maybe we didn't have the budget for real extreme special effects makeup, or I felt like we were using security footage because maybe we didn't have access to a high quality camera to really document it in a cinematic style, but that we kind of defaulted to this black and white grainy footage because it was to use the resources to improvise based off of the small amount of resources that she had. That's how I'm interpreting it. It felt like she was hampered by it. I love that she cast someone with a developmental disability, and didn't point it out and be like, hey, look, this person has a developmental disability.
Right.
That was fantastic. But yeah, for me, everything you're saying, it's clever, it's interesting. She has a great mind as an artist, but her execution, I don't think, is as high quality as it could be. But the trade-off of that is she's making lots and lots of content. She's working on her craft. She's getting out into the world. She's getting feedback, and she's iterating. So I'm trying not to understate it. I hope I'm being very obvious in that I'm a big fan of hers.
Right.
I think the big core thing that's missing from this film, though, is what is the motivation of the serial killer. It's all women who walk by this flower patch, but I don't know why he does it, and I kind of know why the vampires attack him, but I don't know why he kills. And I agree that it's a misdirect, but I think that's a core thing of what's missing. So, and he keeps his watch on while he washes his hands, which really bothered me. But other than that, so Nicole, I really want a patron to come to you with just scads of money, and I'm dying to see what you do with it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting because there's things like the throat slit, right? That actually looks really good, and it's like they obviously took time to set that up and make it look nice. And so it's like I'm like, now it kind of makes me scratch my head. It's like, really, I know she made it she said $500, but you had enough money and time to make that look good. You could have made other parts of it look good too. It doesn't necessarily, you don't need more money necessarily to make something look better. It's just more time and more focus.
Maybe it's a time thing.
And I don't know. But I'm not trying to be overly critical of or anything. Obviously she's working with small resources, and she's getting these things done within a reasonable amount of time, which I think is great. But yeah, you wonder what could have this been if it was approached a little differently, and maybe, I don't know, yeah, I don't know. I guess I it's hard to really say what you could have done with this with the same amount of budget. Maybe there isn't a better version of this, but I feel like each artist comes at a story or a concept with a certain idea, a certain vision for it, and I think this is clearly her vision for it. Like I don't feel like. What I'm saying is I don't feel like she had another vision and she was like, oh, I only have $500. Like, let me do this. Like, I feel like this is her vision, and this is just what she had in her mind, and she executed on that. But it's like, but you can't really say to somebody, oh, well, what if you thought about it this way and had a different vision for it? Maybe it could have been something different. It's like, oh, well, that was her vision and she executed. And
well, then if that's the case, then I would work on performance more. Then I would take some time and get to the core of these characters, because yes, they're serial killers and vampires or whatever, but it's more scary and it's more captivating if I really believe that's going on, right? And I didn't believe anything, but I did take a step back and go, oh, that's clever, oh, that's interesting, oh, I appreciate her, but I'm not immersed as an audience member.
Yeah, I feel like the disconnection between the killer is what if I would have had more close-ups with him, seen his face more, kind of, I know we had those eyeball shots and he's like talking about the demons and that he sees these demons come on my path and I must, whatever, take care of the demons. And then I thought it was fun that they became demons later and ate him. I mean, that was cool. But I don't know. I guess I wanted to feel more like I like this visceral experience where you feel like you're with the characters, like you're with the action, you're in the moment. Like when I see this movie, like I imagine rather than the security footage, just having the camera like right up with him as he's gardening, have these people walk into focus, and then like have the interaction play. But that's just my vision for it. Doesn't mean that it's better than Nicole's. It's just different, But yeah, I don't know. I really, like you said, like I really respect Nicole a lot. Like I really think that, like she's living what I talk about. Like I talk about, I want to be this filmmaker who keeps on making movies and always makes movies and always a project. She's like doing it. Like she's made like 2 shorts, like in the last, like since I started working on my feature. Well, not start, like since I finished my feature, I think she's done 2 shorts. So it's like, or more probably. So I don't know, but I mean. Anyways, I want to talk about this in the shorts versus features part because I think
go for it.
Stuff to go.
Segue.
So yeah, thanks again, Nicole, and people, let us know what you think and send in your movies because we want to see more. We haven't really gotten any Get Shorties in a while. We went through all these Australian filmmaker shorts that we got sent, but we haven't got any since Sean sent that batch. So send them in, people. But yeah, I think it's time for Soap Dish.
I'm Lori Craven, and I'm an actress.
An actress? Really? How nice for you. I'm Betsy Faye Sharon, and I'm a bitch.
So, this is the thing that we've been talking about throughout the episode, this shorts versus features conversation. And I don't know if it's really a Soap Dish topic, but I mean, it's definitely not a You've Got Mail, so I figured might as well just throw it here. So I've been thinking a lot about this, like you've always told me, like, to go make a feature. Like, stop making shorts, go make a feature. Like, it's going to get you to another level of filmmaking. You're going to actually have an asset that you can make money off of. You're going to kind of get into the world of the business of filmmaking and stop just making shorts that, you can't actually make money on. And then when we talked to Tom, he was like, shorts have done way more for me than my career than features. Which is really interesting. And then I was just texting with Oren from Just Shoot It last night, and he was telling me like, oh, $250,000 feature or less, like there's no point to make those. No one watches those. Like those don't get anywhere. Like when's the last time you paid for a $250,000 movie on anything or rented one? And he was just like going on all this stuff and this very cynical LA sort of tirade on how like, you can only make one of those movies if you're a famous person and have it be successful. And, like it's better to just try to get big stars into a project and do it that way than to like just go out and make a low budget movie, which I disagree with. But anyways, all of this is to say, like, what do you think? Like, are you still like, yeah, gung-ho, go make a feature? Or do you think it is actually better to like just focus on shorts and try to win the short lottery like at festivals or, with like it going viral or something like that?
I mean, I think to a degree, Oren is right, and to a degree, he's wrong, right? It's like I'm split, as you were describing it. I tend to make shorts when I'm unable to make a feature. And I know that's a weird statement. It sounds very privileged. I'm just saying my record has showed that if I cannot make a feature, I made a short that we're going to talk about in a maybe we've already talked about it by now. I think we've talked about it last week.
Yeah.
In the past / future for me, I made a short because we had to delay the production of Speed of Life by 8 months. And I was like, I can't just not do something. I have to shoot something. So I just put together a musical last minute, and we shot it over 2 days, and we made it a short. And this summer I'm doing a horror comedy short because, again, I was going to direct this movie that I pulled out of the project, and I really, all that momentum I'm transferring to the short. I am doing stunt casting, and I'm reaching out to celebrities, and I am doing really gross, disgusting makeup effects, and I'm trying to make it noteworthy. So I think if you're going to play the game of the short to get people's attention, you do have to fuel it with certain look at me, like genre or makeup or shock factor or something. If your goal is like representation or investors or thing like that, like you have to, whatever. What the point is, you have to play the game no matter what. You have to play the game in the short. You have to play the game with the feature, and it shouldn't really matter. If you only have the time and resources for a short, though, there's nothing wrong with it. I just personally, even if no one saw my first feature, I benefited personally from having made it way more than having made every other short I've ever made. It's not an answer, Alrik. I feel like I just spun my wheels.
No, I think it is. I mean, I feel like what you just said was the perfect response. It's like, making a feature is like you need to make it to like learn how to be a better filmmaker, and then hopefully it gets a lot of attention. Hopefully people like it. Hopefully it does really well and it helps you get your next feature made. But in the very least, it'll make you ready to make your next feature and you ready to continue your career as a filmmaker. And like, if you just wait forever for like, the perfect cast to align, the perfect money to come in or whatever to make your first feature, especially, you could be waiting your whole life, and I feel like that's true even if you've made 2 or 3 features and you're trying to, put the pieces together to make your next one. Like, you could be putting your pieces together forever. So like, I think at some point you just have to go out and make something, if that's really what you want to do. Or if you don't care about making things and you really just want to like play the game and like you only want to make something that's going to like sell to Sony or like, be on Netflix or whatever, then play that game forever and just see what happens, But what I told Oren last night in my text message was that like, I just want to make movies for the rest of my life. And it doesn't matter like if they, what level of success they garner. Like, I mean, obviously it'd be great if like, something was to, be seen by a lot of people or, grow outside of my regular fan base, my small fan base that I'm, kind of creating now. But the point is just to keep on making movies. And so like make one, raise the money, make it, release it, try to make it as best you can, get it out to as many people as possible, have the best success you can, and then repeat the process. And then just keep on repeating that process until I die. That's basically what I want to do with my life. And like based off of what some other filmmakers have said, like I think I can't remember, I think it was Myron even, he was talking about like the journey, and it's like really embracing the journey of filmmaking, and like that's like what you should be enjoying is the process and not like the outcome. And that's something I've been thinking a lot about lately, is like really enjoying the outcome, the process. And like, do I enjoy the process? And just doing the ADR for the alternate the other day, it's like I fucking love it. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. I was super nervous to do it because I was like, oh my God, is this gonna work or is this gonna fail or whatever? But when I was out there directing my actors for these ADR lines, it was fucking fun. So I don't know, man. Like, I think I've kind of answered my own question for myself. It's just like I just want to make movies, and I feel like I've made so many shorts. I've made 7 shorts. Like, my first short had the most attention. All the other ones, not so much. And it's like, you can just keep on making shorts forever, trying to like get into like big festivals, get people to watch it, get millions of views. And I mean, you may never get that outcome, right? So if you're going to make a short, be making it, if I'm going to make a short, I'd be making it for like the reasons you're making your shorts, like for the process, to get out and make something, to grow as a filmmaker, to like, use it as a way to like get the next project made, like whatever, those kinds of things. But I don't want to just make shorts to try to like, get into Sundance or like
as the career move, right? That
Right.
primary goal can't be the. Well, I was also
Yeah.
thinking, we had our weekend, the first 2 days of our incubator this weekend, and it was like insane, Alrik. I cannot believe we got 60 filmmakers in a room, and
Wow.
we bonded so quickly over the times we felt taken advantage of, exploited, disappointed, our hearts were broken, and it like cemented something. It was amazing. With this short, I've already told my crew that we're doing 8-hour days. We're doing 8-hour days. And if we need 3 days instead of 2, normally I'd be like, this is a 2-day short. It's a 9-page script. It's a 2-day short. I'm like, no, we're going to do 3 days. And they're going to be 8-hour days. And I'm asking every single person on the crew, how can I make your job easier? You know what I mean? So I think if you're trying to test, like, test or pilot changes in the way you make content, you could do that on a short. You know, me doing 8-hour days on a feature might be disastrous if it's micro budget or whatever it is. But if I could try out different strategies in a short and really seek out new relationships and new ways of working and how we can rehearse better and whatever it is, I think that's also a reason to do a short, is to experiment in something.
Yeah, and then maybe if it goes well, then you can do 8-hour days on your next feature. You know, if you figure out the way it needs to be in order for that to be successcue. You know,
right, the right crew alignment and who to hire and how much money you need and whatever. But I know I made it a footnote, but I'll just reinforce that. I really feel like these 60 filmmakers, I really think we're going to see seed change in this industry. At the very least, we'll have 60 people. In 8 weeks, we'll have 60 people who are going to attempt to do things slightly differently on their next project, which is really cool.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully you'll share your findings on the show so people can like learn, you know, along with you guys as you're learning, because I think that's really valuable. And, you know, I've been thinking about that for my next feature too. Like, well, how am I going to approach it? And like, you know, I really like the way that, you know, gosh, what's her name?
Marielle Heller. Yeah, French Hours.
No, Christine Weatherup. You know,
Christine, the weekends thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
She shot on the weekends.
She shot on the weekends, or she shot like 3 days on, 4 days off, or something like that.
Yeah.
And like did that for 4 weeks instead of doing like, you know, 6 days on, 1 day off for 2 or 3 weeks or something. And that seemed pretty good. I kind of want to take that a little bit further and do like, you know, like do 3 days, like take like, you know, like a week and a half off, do 3 days, take a week, you know, and just like give the time, especially if you're doing a special effects movie, give the special effects department time to make the next effect. So they don't have to do like a bunch of like, you know, work at once to like get all the effects ready, but they can just focus on one. We execute it, they're done with it, move on to the next one. Execute it, done with it, move on to the next one.
Can you imagine, like, if you hire your editor at that time, you sit with your editor for like that week and you just comb through the footage and be like, what could make this better? What could make this better? And you do it.
Just slow down the process, right? So like instead of you're making a movie in 3 weeks, you're making it in like 2 months or two and a half months even.
It's what Aleem did, but not to an extreme of like 9 years or
not 9 years. Yeah. do it like within a set schedule, and then like, you know, make sure that everyone holds the days that they are needed around the schedule. So if like, you know, they can fill in with their corporate work in between, and then, you know, come out and do the feature. And then, you know, my plan would be like to have like the core crew be local actors, and then fly in, you know, LA actors, you know, for like little guest spots, like, you know, for 3-day pieces at a time, you know, and then do it all in my backyard of Vallejo, you know.
With some chickens.
With some chickens, exactly. Definitely have to have some chickens in my movies at some point, now that I have 4 chickens as props for free. But yeah, so interesting. So it sounds like we're both like, yay features. We'll make shorts when we need to, but features are better. Is that what we're
after
sort of
like this year and a half of being locked in our house, right? All of us. I'm down for however anyone wants to make any kind of content. Like, I used to be so cranky about shorts and be like, don't do them. But now I'm like, whatever feeds you. If that short feeds you, you have to do it.
I mean, shorts are fun. Like I like the format of a short, and I like the storytelling of a short. Andrew Carlberg was talking about. Like, shorts are really cool. They're very unique. You could do things in a short you can't do in a feature, and I really like that. But trying to raise money for shorts is crazy. And like if you make them for so little that it's like either not that big of a cost or you can afford it on your own. I think that's great. A $500 short is like an awesome thing if you can make it good, which I think Nicole is like proving that it's possible. I mean, what we talked about on the show is good enough for our conversation. So, I mean, I think it's a pretty good sign that money isn't everything, people. Like, people tend to like always complain. They're like, oh, I don't have any money. I can't raise money to make my movies. It's like, well, you can actually just go out and make a movie. But there's nothing really stopping you except yourself. So anyways, with that, if you want to support the show, you can go over to patreon.com/MMIH podcast. Give what you can. It'll all go into paying for our wonderful editor, Cameron, or whoever else we have edit for us time to time, here and there, as I say. If you want to send a question, comment, or suggestion, or tell us how we're wrong about features being better than shorts, you can send an email to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. Or if you really like the show, you can leave a review on iTunes and tell us why the show is good and hopefully not why it's bad. And finally, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MMIH Podcast, and YouTube at Making Movies is Hard Podcast on YouTube.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Tom Putnam for coming on the show. Check out our website, makingmoviesishard.com, where you can just find out more about us and other episodes that we've broadcast. Thanks to editor Cameron for doing all the editing. And thanks again to everyone for listening, and talk to all y'all next week. Okay.
There we go.
Misha's closed. Two. This means fuck you. This means victory in Europe.
Doesn't it mean peace in America?
Well, it also means victory in Europe.
Yeah,
Whatever.
It does mean victory in Europe. But like, it's like, peace, man.
Yeah.
Chill out, bro.
It's what Bono always does.
Yeah. That's funny.